I think landlords should absolutely increase rents. Would the landlord be happy to install a dishwasher, do you think? You should absolutely be not paying your rent. I would rather have 2 properties to rent out at £1,000 a month each, rather than 1 property at £2,000 a month.
Yeah.
Most landlords will make it their absolute priority, whether it's 2 in the morning or 4 in the afternoon, to get a plumber out to try and repair it or replace it as soon as possible.
Any significant changes on that end for a tenant that they should be aware of? Or?
A landlord has no obligation to improve the property whilst you're living there. Maybe a tenant in a crazily rising market would prefer a 10% increase every 6 months. 400,000 properties a year need to be built or something like that. Just to.
What about, one thing we talked previously with the landlord was around responsibilities for like upkeep and maintenance, and you kind of mentioned it there. Any significant changes on that end for a tenant that they should be aware of? Or?
Well, they're trying to bring in a decent home standard, which is fair enough. But, outside of all these government changes and law changes, I think it's important for tenants to understand that a landlord has no obligation to improve the property whilst you're living there. They have a massive contractual obligation to maintain the property while you're living there. So I might have touched on this in the last video, but we had a really lovely situation. Landlord's lovely, tenant's lovely, rents are rising in the area, so it was tenancy renewal date, and we had a discussion. We could have got $1,500 a month. They were paying $1,400 a month, and we agreed on $1,450, right? Tenant said, totally happy with that. Thank you. I'll agree to that. Oh, and by the way, would the landlord be happy to install a dishwasher, do you think? So it wasn't, I will pay the $1,450 if they will improve the property and put a dishwasher in. It was always, yeah, totally get it. We love the living here. And the landlord was like, absolutely. She was actually embarrassed that she hadn't put one in because she thought she had done it a year or so ago. And just really nice. But from a landlord's obligations, and this is the problem, I think tenants, where this will help, okay, renters' rights bill, this is really good. Where this will help is there's a thing called a revenge eviction, a bit of a term that landlords have termed it, or agents might have termed it. I don't know where it come from, but it's a revenge eviction where like tenants might have been a bit of a pain in the backside for the last 6 months, and they just want to get them out. Where this will be good is that can no longer be done. A landlord has to, and I think that's caused fear in tenants that I don't want to be too pushing my landlord for this and that. When actually, if the landlord's not keeping up to their end of the bargain of the tenancy and the landlord's in breach of tenancy, you should absolutely be not paying your rent until it's done. I really believe that. There's a tenancy is an agreement, both parties. If you've reported a problem with the maintenance, not an improvement, if it's like you're not prepared to install a dishwasher, I'm not paying my rent, because you won't get anywhere with that. If it's extreme, the boiler's broken, I've got no heating. If a landlord's been seen to sit on that for too long, then you're in your right to say, look, fair enough, but I think I deserve a pro-rata refund on my rent for 3 days because it's taken you 7 days to get this fixed, and it really isn't fair. And that's where I think these new protections will benefit tenants, and I hope that they will get a bit stronger with these not nice landlords. Most landlords will make it their absolute priority, whether it's 2 in the morning or 4 in the afternoon, to get a plumber out to try and repair it or replace it as soon as possible. But some landlords will push the boundaries a bit, I think, is what they can and can't do.
The bit that I can recall some concerns around last time we chatted about this was something that I think a lot of people will hear, particularly tenants, and go, oh, that's great, I'm really happy with that. But then how you broke it down and explained it certainly sounded concerning, and that was the rent increases. So this idea that under the Renters' Right Bill, landlords will have restrictions on how frequently they can increase the rent. Was it once a year?
Once a year.
Once a year.
Yeah.
Which on the surface, oh great, cool. So my rent can only go up once, rather than multiple times a year. What you talked about last time was that, well, don't get too excited about that, because it could mean that people that's your one chance to crank the price. So that actually, on the surface, sounds good for a tenant, but in practice might actually be quite concerning. Yeah,
and on the surface, if rents have gone up 20% in that year, then your rent's probably going to go up 20% in a year, because there's no restriction to not increase it less or more than market rate. Market rate is determined by supply and demand. I need to get that out there, right? Unless we magic a load of properties out of places, prices will keep going up, because demand's going up, supply isn't keeping up, so rents are going to continue to rise. Restricting landlords to only be able to increase it once a year is actually, maybe a tenant in a crazily rising market would prefer a 10% increase every 6 months to manage the hike better. Because then they're going to start, this is where we call this and them mentality, is, oh my God, my landlord's just increased my rent 20%. They don't say because the market has risen 20% because of X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
So it's that it is what it is. But I kind of feel like there should be an agreement between landlord and tenant to be able to come to that decision themselves.
Is it going to create a bit of a tension point, a bit of a flashpoint in a rent agreement? Because
I think it would, yeah.
It's quite a scheduled thing, isn't it? Because the landlord's going to be looking, going, I kind of need to get this done now. We've only got a few months left. We need to. It's kind of crunch time.
Yeah, and it's going to cause friction every year, I guess. And my advice is, and you can watch the video back before, but I think landlords should absolutely increase rents if market rents are increasing, not to the extreme. If you've got a good tenant, don't take them to the extreme of what the market value is a year, 3 years into a tenancy. Don't wring the flannel and squeeze every last penny. Like I said before, we had a property that was getting 1,400. It could achieve 15. We agreed on 1,450 because we're in a great tenant and we want them to be happy and want them to stay. But there will be landlords that will see it as their only opportunity. If the market's risen 10%, let's get it up 10% then.
But there are going to be caps on what that could go to. But those caps will be a reflection of the value of the property. And in some cases, well, in most cases with property rising, you can't really do a great deal about that.
No.
It just is what it is.
Yeah. And this is why it was kind of coined in the media as a different way to cap rents. Like it's not capping rents.
Yeah. It's something that all is it? It's just you've got one shot at bringing the rent up.
Rents will rise. And the flip side, I also hope there's a day where so many properties are built that rents start to go down, because then it's the other way around. Every year it could be going the other way. But I see that extremely unlikely, unfortunately, for tenants, unless there's, what's the goal, like 400,000 properties a year need to be built or something like that, just to make up for the backlog that hasn't been built per target for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Like we've been hitting our target for the last 10 years, Conservative government, whatever. So now Labour's going to try and do that with the grey belt and the green belt and this belt and that belt. And it's just like, I hope more property is great for me.
It feels good for, well, I guess it's bad for, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people for a long time in this country have talked about the housing stock and how low it is and how it's creating problems all over the place. So
I don't ever want to quote, but when you compare net immigration versus properties built, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, I would rather have 2 properties to rent out at £1,000 a month each, rather than 1 property at £2,000 a month.
Yeah.
We have no real. We people in the comments all day long is bash the letting agent and bash the agent, and I get it, I understand it, because we're the conduit, we're the in-betweenie. But £100 a year rent increases doesn't really affect my life at all. I would rather there be 300,000 more properties a year to be able to sell and rent and manage.